what inspired you to start Find Your Freedom?
Yeah, so really I kind of stumbled into being an entrepreneur because I knew what I wanted my life to look like. And I had never really thought about designing my professional life to fit my personal life. It'd always been kind of the opposite. I needed to design my life to meet my priorities. So that's when I started Serenity Hotel Group. I don't want to be the GM anymore. I'm going to have my own hotel management company. I'm going to manage them. I'll have multiple properties and I'll work around my family schedule, around what I want my life to look like. Everyone has a different path to finding their own freedom. I always would front load. Work as hard as you can, learn as much as you can, become really good at something that you're passionate about, and that can unlock a lot of doors for you. How can we provide better value and keep growing this? I don't want to just put content out there. I want content to be out there that people will watch me like, this is applicable and digestible. It can improve my life. I want every episode to be like, oh, that's like a gem.
Welcome everyone to the OG Pod. Today I have my friend Jonathan Steers, who is a multi-time entrepreneur, founder of multiple companies, and the president of Better Together International, a nonprofit that supports children in Haiti. Welcome, John.
Thanks so much, man. I'm super excited to be on. I've been following your progress, and what you've done with the originals is pretty badass, so I'm stoked to be part of it.
Well, I'm really excited about this new world of podcasting. What inspired you to start Find Your Freedom?
So I'm a kind of a serial entrepreneur. I kind of stumbled into becoming an entrepreneur. I was super corporate the whole first half of my professional career. And kind of what got me into being an entrepreneur was I wanted to have kids and spend time with my children. So I couldn't do that in the old profession, which was being a hotel manager. I'd be working, 12 hours a day. And at the time that I kind of had this realization, I was living in Turks and Caicos, and I was like, I want to have kids. I want to spend time with my kids. And this is not aligning with what my goals are for the rest of my life. So I was like, I got to figure out a way to start my own thing and have more freedom.
Was this Serenity Hotels, which you still have an affiliation with, right?
Yeah, so this is like right before Serenity Hotels. So I started my career in hotel management. I went to Long Beach State, worked at hotels, and then I traveled around opening hotels for Starwood. So I worked for like Westin and W, St. Regis. I'd go to Lake Chicago and open a W there, and then I'd stay there for 2 months, train the staff, open it, party with the staff, and then go to the next city, go to New York and open a hotel there. And through my affiliation with Starwood, which is now Marriott, one of the VPs was leaving and joining his own hotel management company called Nikki Beach that was in Turks and Caicos, and he asked if I wanted to come out to help him open that hotel. So I left Starwood, moved to Turks and Caicos, left my family in California, and lived there for 2 years, basically working all day, every day. So
can you say that again?
Brutal.
What is it called? Turks and Caicos? What is that?
Yeah,
and where
Turks
is it?
and Caicos. So it's it's kind of the ritzy, super expensive, rich person island, right above Dominican Republic and
below
Haiti.
Epstein's Island.
Yeah, exactly. So it's right next to the Bahamas. But it's a super small island. It's a desert island, and it's got the most beautiful beaches of anywhere that I've ever been. Like just the bluest water, white sand beach. What it's kind of famous for is Grace Bay Beach as this like 9-mile beach, which is just unbelievable. But it's a desert island and it's a super small country. So living there was not optimal. It's a great place to probably visit and and to party at and relax at. But living there was pretty brutal. So I was just working all the time there. And that was where I learned so much, because I was 27 when I went there. I was the director of guest services. The GM got fired. I kind of just like filled the role and ended up taking on the role as GM. So I was running this high-end luxury resort at 27, 28, and failing pretty miserably, trying my hardest, but I was in over my head, and I had a great team around me, and we were all pretty inexperienced in opening an international hotel. It was so different than like Marriott, because the Marriott knew what they were doing and Nikki Beach was just opening their first hotel. So it was just like a totally different, anyway. So,
well, you must have learned something to still have Serenity Hotels, up and running.
Well, that was the reason I was able to do Serenity Hotels. Like I learned so much. Like the hotels itself became a failure because the ownership went into receivership. And so they kind of lost the property. So that was why we ended up leaving there. But really it was like my master's degree in building a culture within people, with your team, and creating programs, and like starting from scratch, and like this brand new huge business, hundreds of employees, and I was in charge of organizing all of it. And I just had this team around me. We just became a family. We were all like, all of us are in over our heads. All of us are just going to try our hardest. And it like really was like my master's degree in like marketing and operations and inventorying and everything.
I love that perspective that you can really get an education just by doing things. You know, you can spend 250 grand going to like an Ivy League school, and I think you get like a network from that, and maybe some like some kind of like intangible connections or benefits, but you learn so much by just by doing things. And I think that's really the spirit of an entrepreneur. And so you have like been able to tackle many different types of businesses, hotels, nonprofits, this podcast, Supergenics, which is like a supplement company. What is the common thread that you have found across all of these businesses that has made you successful?
Well, I wouldn't say I've been successful at all of them. We've had some failures along the way, but I guess that's part of the process, right?
Yeah, they're necessary.
Yeah, that's part of the process. So really I kind of stumbled into being an entrepreneur because when I came back from Turks and Caicos, I knew what I wanted my life to look like. And I had never really thought about designing my professional life to fit my personal life. It'd always been kind of the opposite, like work as hard as you can, get a promotion, get your 5% raise. Eventually you'll make enough money to hopefully support a family, and hopefully eventually you'll have work less hours. And that was kind of where my mindset was during like my whole early 20s right out of college. But when I went through that Turks and Caicos process, it was just like, oh man, this is not how I want it to be. I needed to design my life how I want to meet my priorities. So that's when I started running a hotel group. So that was it. Like, I don't want to be the GM anymore. I'm going to have my own hotel management company. I'm going to manage the GMs. The GMs can work the hours. I'm going to manage them. I'll have multiple properties, and I'll work around my family schedule, around what I want my life to look like. So like that's was once again
intentional approach to your lifestyle. I think one of the things that any entrepreneur is going to struggle with is finding the balance between all of the work that they have to do, all of the roles and responsibilities that they have to perform, and having a lifestyle that they desire. Right. So how have you struck that balance? And after that, I'll try to remember. I really want to know what this lifestyle that you had in mind was. The balance, I think, really comes, everyone has a different path. I definitely feel that way, to finding their own freedom. And mine was really, I always would front load. So it's just like work as hard as you can, learn as much as you can, try and become an expert, become really good at something that you're passionate about. And that can unlock like a lot of doors for you. So I don't know if I obviously don't think I had that wisdom back then, but I was like, I'm going to work hard. I'm just going to keep trying at what I think I'm really good at, which I was really good at running hotels. So I came back from Turks and Caicos, and I just started driving up and down the California coast. I would get on PCH every morning, wake up and just drive up and down the coast, like knocking on doors, like, will you trust me to manage your property? I'm 28 years old. I just got back from Turks and Caicos. And it was, really but
was
you already
like...
had some accolades under your belt at that point.
Yeah.
You had some credibility.
Yeah, but still 28 was a little rough because you're dealing with mostly 60-year-old, mostly older people own hotels. Not a lot of young people own hotels.
Sure, right.
And and so I partnered with my business partner, who was the one who first hired me at the front desk in college. He was running a hotel. He had a small property. So I was like, let's just use this property. Let's try and grow it. And it didn't go as planned. Like over a year, I drove up and down the coast, trying to convince people every morning, getting no callbacks, following up with people, and it was brutal. And that was kind of my
hurt, and
dude,
it hurts more if you're spending gas money.
Cold doors hurt.
Yeah,
cold doors hurt.
Those hurt too.
So it was like people just wouldn't even want to like come out and talk to me. I'd be at the hotel, I know that they were there, and they'd be like, "Yeah, he's not going to come out and talk to you." I'm just like, "All right, well, I'll be here when he walks out."
But
so we eventually
found so much success since then. Like, it sounds like you didn't let that discourage you or take you off a path that you were trying to go on.
You can't. Yeah, I think to be like totally real, you can't help but to be discouraged in the moment. in the moment,
Sure.
it's super disheartening. But you just can't let it stop you from waking up the next day and doing it. So I did that for over a year. I think it was actually over a year and a half. And we got a couple of consulting gigs that we were hoping were going to lead to contracts. And that's when I got the opportunity, you know, we were talking about work real hard, be real good at what you're doing, and then opportunities will come. And one of my friends had just started a dietary supplement company. And he said, Jonathan, he had just moved back from Utah. We were working at the gym together. He's like, yeah, man, it's going pretty good. Like, we're getting a lot of sales online, but like, we don't really know how to grow it. So I looked at his books and I said like, oh, like, here's a few things I would do. Here's like the low hanging fruit from my experience in marketing and operations. Here's what I think you guys should do, because they didn't really have any operations in business. They were just really smart guys. And he's like, yeah, we don't really know how to do that. Why don't you come on board as a partner and just help do those things? So I hadn't had much progress with the hotel company. So my business partner, you know, I said, can you manage what we have? And he's like happy to do that. He's much smarter than I also. And so I just like went full bore on this dietary supplement thing. And it's so crazy. Like, you know, dietary supplements, that has nothing to do with hotels. But
right.
It's just one of those things. Business is business. You know, it's just like
Yes.
all the things you've done. Like, you've started all these different companies. It's just like programming is programming. You can do it for all types of different things. And it's just like, all right, operations, like I need to hire a staff. So we built out a call center. We need to do fulfillment. So we built out a warehouse. It's just like, these are things that were like almost exactly the same as a hotel. It just doesn't seem like it. Customer service. All right, yeah, we got to do sales. Front desk sales at a hotel. So it was all like same exact stuff. And then marketing wise, it's just like really like kind of common sense stuff. Like, all right, well, what are our options? Radio, TV, you know, social media was pretty early back then. And I was like, what's the biggest thing we can do? Let's see how big this market really is. Let's make a TV commercial. We have a product. I see direct to consumer products all the time on TV. Yeah. We're like,
Wow.
We're like, yeah, I mean, you see TV commercials, like, you know, 1-800 call. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, I think this product works like that. And it's cool because the people I'd partnered with, it was a really good product that had been proven. We did a clinical trial on it, like full pharmaceutical grade clinical trial. It's just like, this is legitimate product. Let's see how big this market is. And they kind of looked at me like you just looked, like a TV commercial for like a weight gain pill. Like, and so we just, you know, I Googled it and put together a little plan. We interviewed some companies. It's just like, you just find people who are experts and you align yourself with them. Made a TV commercial, threw it up pretty quickly. It was like a minimal capital expense. And boom.
Yeah,
it,
how much was it, if you don't mind me
showed.
asking? Like,
I think the first commercial, we put everything together for like $30K. It was like
$30K,
a lot of money, but not a ton of money for like what the upside was if it showed progress. And so we kind of weighed those risks.
Did you have any way to estimate performance, or like, or were you just like, oh, we're going to take this risk. If we take a 30K hit, we'll just, you know, take that setback?
Yeah. So we knew what our conversion was from online. We were really lucky because one of the other partners, you know, like I'd said, you kind of align yourself with other experts in their field. So our mutual friend Tyler is an incredible programmer who had built this proprietary software just for our product. So it was all inclusive. He'd started from bare minimum to build up everything that we needed. So he was able to provide us
with Twilio and like an automatic call center and all this stuff, right?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, we actually have other companies that were coming to us. We actually created a software company just for that product, because we had other companies coming to us be like, what do you guys use? And we'd show them and they'd be like, this is better than what I'm paying this huge other software company. This is way better. And Tyler is really, really good at what he does. So we were lucky. We had all these different metrics that we could utilize. And we knew like if with the media company we worked with, they're like, you should be able to get this many views, this much traffic. If you're getting this conversion off of those, then you can estimate that you'll get this return. And we thought that there was a high likelihood we would at least break even, just based on our good conversion from the site and all those things. So it showed exactly what we want. Like, we made a profit on the first commercial, and that was like a really poor representation of what it could be. So from there, we created a real, more professional looking commercial. You know, it's one of those things. And that's a recommendation I have for all entrepreneurs. Like, you just got to try it out. Like, find an affordable way to test the market. You got to test your ideas. Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket and put all this money invested into it and then just like run with it without ever knowing if it's going to take off. Like, so many people just have one big home run and they strike out, and it's so sad. So this was really like our let's just do like a sacrifice bunt and see if we can get to first. And we got to first, and then we were able to steal a couple bases. And so we've been on TV for 10 years now. It's like a really cool story. So awesome. So the company Supergenics CB1 Weekender has been around for 12 years now. Last year was the 10th year I was on board, and we were in Vegas. Me and the two partners were having dinner, having some drinks in the bar in Vegas. And Travis, one of the partners, pokes Tyler and says, "Look at the TV." I turn around, and there's our TV commercial, CB1 Weight Gainer on ESPN in the bar in Vegas. And it was just it was a super badass thing, because we were there for our 10-year anniversary. And it just felt like one of those moments where it's like, yeah, we made it, Mom. Like, we made it. We're on ESPN.
Totally.
Yeah, so it was super, super cool. But, one of those things where there's so many lessons that come through that.
And in those lessons, you're always iterating. I think that's one of the things that if you look at any entrepreneur, and you're a great example of this, but also any business, they have to pivot so many times before they find their product market fit and get adoption and get everything up and running. It just takes this constant grind of trying things out, seeing what works, and not quitting. I think is a big part of being an entrepreneur. Right. And I think that the same attitude of an entrepreneur is that of, it's hard to say, like it's an archetype of a person, like maybe an athlete or an entrepreneur or an artist. They're all grinding on something, and they all share that same requirement to never stop and just keep trying to find the product market fit.
Absolutely. Resilience.
So we see that in your businesses.
Resilience is huge.
Resilience is huge.
Yeah. It's been like a pretty consistent theme.
Yeah. So what takes the majority of your attention these days? Like, what are you focused on? With all these businesses?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate. Once you, so that's what our podcast is called. It's called Find Your Freedom. So once you're able to sort of create that lifestyle that you want, where you kind of don't bottleneck yourself in the day-to-day business operations, then you're able to free yourself up for like more of the passions in your life. So, so in my early 30s, I wanted to have children, and I was lucky enough to mostly take off. So my goal was just before they're in school, I want to spend as much time with my kids as possible. So for the last 5 years, I've mostly just spent a lot of time with my two daughters. My oldest just started kindergarten, and my youngest is in preschool now. And it's just been like probably the biggest gift I could have given myself, to have that opportunity. Because everyone always tells me you never get those years back. Once they start school, then you can, go do whatever, but they're only home with you before school for such a minute amount of time. So I did that for the last 5 years. And one of my other passions, we started our nonprofit, which is called Better Together International. When I lived in Turks and Caicos, half my staff was Haitian. And so I was really interested. I hadn't known much about Haiti. So I went and visited the country and stayed with some of the friends there and some of my staff. And I fell in love with the country, and the history is just like mind-blowing. Like, did you know that Haiti is the first country to defeat Napoleon? Haiti beat Napoleon. I had no idea. It was the first defeat Napoleon had, because it was a French province, and Haiti fought for them for their independence. Basically, the slaves and the local people there fought the French colonizers for their independence and beat Napoleon and gained their own independence. It was the first defeat for Napoleon. But it was also,
that's incredible.
It was such a significant thing for that. But then France has been punishing the country since then for that defeat. So since
Isn't that like 100, 200 years ago?
Yeah. Well, that's why it's in such bad shape right now, because of the historical significance of France saying, all right, all the people that we're aligned with, you guys can't do business with Haiti now because they beat us and now they're independent. And it's just, just like been this cycle of like, they can't get trade partners. They can't get in and out domestic travel. It's been like a really huge challenge for them. So the country is like literally the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So anywhere North, South America, it's the most impoverished country. So they have a lot of needs.
It's interesting that your experience led you there, though, just like through almost happenstance of getting into hotels, and then you learn more about that culture, and now that's part of your culture and your work and your efforts.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff is such an evolution.
It's crazy, and it's such a huge part of my life now because in the last 8 years or so, I've practiced Stoicism, parts of Stoicism, which like every morning I wake up and I try and think about how fortunate my life is to put like myself in the right perspective, and I think about those children in Haiti that are born into these situations that they have no control over, and it kind of makes you think about how fortunate we are to be born into the situation we were born into. Just being in America, number one, like how fortunate are we to live in a country that has so much wealth and opportunity, and we had no control over that. That's just luck, right? That we were born here. We could have been born anyway. People are born anyway.
In Haiti.
So that kind of helps give you perspective when you go throughout your day and like bad shit happens. You're like, oh, well, that was really bad shit, but I have like so much to be thankful for. And I think that kind of Stoicism perspective, thinking through those things, thinking through like how fortunate I am, and my children are healthy. One of the things that I went through when my first daughter was young, I had to go to CHOC, the children's hospital nearby. And like you'd look around and be like, man, there's so many sick kids here. This is so fucked up. And it's just like, man, we're so lucky. We're so fortunate. People deal with such huge challenges.
Well, and it gives you this responsibility then to, once you acknowledge how fortunate you are and how blessed you are, you then have that responsibility to try to figure out, well, how can I, improve other people's lives? And it sounds like that's what you're doing in Haiti. So you guys have procured some land and an orphanage, or like, what are your efforts there?
Yeah, so Haiti's just gotten worse. COVID, really impacted a lot of the third world countries, and it was bad for us here, but it was really bad for them there. So they've gone even more downhill. The president got assassinated, and the new president took over, and then it turned out that the president took over was actually the one that assassinated the old president. So there's like no government there right now. So the gangs just took over the whole country, and there's no military force in Haiti that can now take it back. So it's like Haiti is just ran by the gangs.
Have you ever heard this expression that trust is the ultimate currency? It's kind of obscure.
I haven't, but I like that.
I like it too, because I think it just shows like when you have corruption, it does create poverty, because nobody, like, instead of just like doing a fair trade and trusting that the other person is treating you fairly, you have to spend all of this time, energy, and effort to double check everything and make sure that like you're not getting screwed and this is a good deal or whatever.
Absolutely.
And the more people can trust each other, the more wealthy I think a society can become. And it's a really strong incentive to try to root out corruption. It's like, let's all get richer. Let's all just literally enjoy more wealth. And that can be time, opportunity, or, money.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that explains a lot about what has happened in Haiti, is there's been so much desperation with poverty for so long that it's bred more and more corruption, because people are so desperate to get what they can just for themselves and their family. Because, like any of us, we haven't been in that situation really, but you think about it, like if you're with your family and they're not going to be able to eat, what are you going to do to get them food? So it breeds desperation. And you're not
questioning anything higher level. You're not thinking of how do I start a business, or what, even stoicism. You're not going to think about stoicism if you're starving, for sure.
Yeah. All you're thinking about is how am I getting a meal?
How you elevate yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are the Stoic practices that have kind of helped you the most?
Yeah, I think really just thinking about, so I was raised Christian, and just over my last 40 years, I've more so just tried to think about, each religion was so confident in their religion being right. And to me, like as I met more Buddhists and Islamic people and Mormons and everything, it's just like all these people are absolutely confident that they've found the right thing. How can everyone be absolutely confident that they found the right religion and the other ones are wrong? How can that be? And to me, it really kind of just brought me to a place where I'm not going to worry about that. If people need that in their lives, then I think that's great if it helps them be better people. But for me, I want to concentrate on being as good of a person as I can be while I'm here. And how big of an impact can I make while I'm here? Well, if there's people that have massive needs, I'm going to try and fill those. And if there's people that are struggling, with their professional lives, that's where my podcast came in. It's like, I was a struggling corporate guy, just lost and like not feeling fulfilled and overworked. And I was able to find entrepreneurship and, through happenstance. And I don't want other people to have to find it through happenstance. So that's why we started Find Your Freedom, is as an opportunity, a podcast to give resources and inspirational stories to people to say like, oh, this is possible. Here's paths that people have done and been successful. That's just like me. I can do it. So that's where the podcast
I love that name,
came
by
in.
the way.
Thank
Find
you.
Your Freedom is such a great name. And also, obviously, if you've been able to intentionally dedicate your life to family for the last 5 years. So what do you do with your freedom? I know you're into fitness and stoicism. Like, let's talk a little bit about that stuff.
Yeah. So,
I
think fitness, healthy body, healthy mind. Like, I think there's so much that goes into that. I think a lot of people don't put any effort into taking care of their body because they're working so hard at work. If they work in too many hours, you come home too tired, then you don't have time to go to the gym, you don't have time to do any exercise, you don't have time to, think about those things. And I totally get it. So I've been fortunate with my freedom to be able to dedicate more time to exercise. And it's really helped me, feel like I'm more mentally stable, more mentally strong. So I just turned 40 this year, and I was like, I'm going to try my first, sprint triathlon. So it's the 3-mile run, quarter-mile swim, 10-mile bike ride, back to back. So I just started training for it, and it really ended up being easier than I expected because I'd been doing some training for it, and to me it was like a cool little stamp, a little bow on my 40th. Just like, all right, like you're still taking care of yourself, you're in a great position, and it was like, God, I just feel like so fortunate that I was able to be raised in a way that I had a real strong work ethic that I learned from my dad and my mom. And I just feel so fortunate that put me in a position to grind out my 20s. And then when I was finally good at doing something, then the opportunities came towards me. And so I wake up, I usually get my girls ready for school with my wife. My wife takes them off to school. I do my emails real quick. I go to the beach. I live in Costa Mesa. I go down to Newport Beach, which is 3 miles away. I run on the beach for 3 miles. I do push-ups, pull-ups, some circuit training, like on the marina side. Then I grab a coffee. I try and read meditations.
You do all that pre-coffee.
Yeah, well, I do coffee. I do 2 cups of coffee in the morning while I'm getting my girls ready. Then I get my latte at the beach. So I try and do this 4 days a week usually. And then I come home, and then I'll kind of knock out some more things while the girls are at school. And then I try and be done with my day by the time the girls get home. But between managing Supergenics, which is a dietary supplement company, managing Better Together, which is the nonprofit, and now Find Your Freedom, which is the podcast, it really has become kind of like, wow, I'm back to being fully busy again. Like, now that the girls are back in school, the plan is coming to fruition. And it feels really good to be putting myself out there. I don't know about you, but when I started the podcast, it was so outside of my comfort zone. I'm not a podcast guy. I'm not a social media guy. I'm not a get in front of the camera type of guy. But I really talk to my co-host, my best friend from the podcast, and try to talk him into it. I was like, dude, we can really impact a lot of people's lives, and we can leave resources for people to utilize to give them inspiration to live better lives. Let's do this thing. And it's been a cool thing to see it come alive. I don't know about you.
Well, no, I love the context of first you have to earn your freedom, and then you have to intentionally decide how you're going to use it. And it sounds like one of the ways that you use it is to practice this healthy body, healthy mind. There's this quote from Socrates that I love that says, "No man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which he is capable of." Wow. And I think about that in my own training and in my own kind of desire to really just see what are the limits, you're this age, you have this opportunity, what can be done? And I think we have a lot of opportunity. And it's another reason why I think people should at least strive to be entrepreneurs in some fashion in their life. And there's so much you can gain from a corporate job and that corporate world. But even within that, just having the attitude of I'm going to go and try to build and create and explore.
I love that. I was curious, what was the catalyst for you to get into running? Because I know when we knew each other 10 years ago, I don't think you were exercising a ton. Like, what was what paradigm shift? Because you're like
no
running every day. It's like such a huge discipline to do that.
It's getting easier the longer I do it, but my fitness really came around. It was almost like 10 years ago. Yeah, it was around the time we met. It was around the increase days, maybe 2 years, 3 years after that. And at the time, I was kind of like approaching 30 years old. And I was like, oh my God, I am not going to be young forever. Like, I'm going to age, I'm going to wither, and I'm going to die. That's not great. And so I was obsessed with all these ideas of like, how do I basically like preserve myself? And one of them was like this real like awakening that aging is not a natural process. It is, obviously, but I started to see it more as a disease to combat. And so how do you combat the disease of aging? Well, it's basically diet, sleep, and exercise. That's
right.
it.
Yeah.
And those are the hard things. And I think it's really a struggle for entrepreneurs who pour themselves into their work and they just have nothing left for themselves. But really, I think if they were to take some portion of their willpower that they dedicate to their work and instead allocate that to their physical well-being, they'd find they actually have more capacity, more energy. And so it sounds like we're aligned there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, just doing a little bit every day and using that as your start, right? Kind of that atomic habits type of thing. Like, just do enough to get yourself started and you can build off of that. You don't have to go work out an hour a day. Get started and do it and feel the benefits. And that can be your food, your drive to keep going and doing it more. But dude, getting up to like 6 miles a day, geez.
Well, I mean, that's not every day. Some days I push it. Just some days you wake up and you're feeling it, and the sun's shining, and your legs are fresh. But I try to do about 20 minutes a day, which really it's not that big of a time commitment. And what I would say to myself 10 years ago is, everyone can walk for 20 minutes. Everyone, and just start walking. It was like when I tried to do my first pull-up. No chance right. I'm going to do a pull-up. You have to first do a negative and, you work your way up to these things. So what was your training like for this triathlon, and what is a sprint triathlon?
Yeah. So it's kind of like the bare minimums triathlon. It's kind of like, they call it the starter triathlon because the real triathlons are so, like we were just talking about atomic habits, like a real triathlon is like so far above what I think I'd be able to do. But I was already running at the beach. And then I thought, you know what, I live a few miles away, so I just took the long way to the beach on a safer road, and that's 5 miles there, 5 miles back. So I'm already getting a 10-mile bike ride in a couple times a week now. And then I was like, I'm already a decent swimmer. Like, let me see so I just started jumping in the marina side of the ocean, started doing like 20 minutes of swimming. I was like, wow, like this makes my body feel great. Running a lot can be really hard on your body. And I was running, 3 miles a day every day. So I was like, all right, now I'm breaking it up. I'm biking and I'm swimming. My body's actually feeling better. My legs aren't hurting at all. And I'm getting more like overall exercise. I'm loving this. So I was like, yeah, this is something I want to do every year. So it's like, like we talked about, you kind of make a goal and then you just like find your path to get there and just stay disciplined. So I did running 3 days a week, biking twice a week, and swimming once a week for maybe like 2 months leading up to it, but I already built up a good amount of running endurance before that. So really I was just adding the other two, and it was just like, it was awesome. It felt great crossing the finish line. And I think it's going to be like an annual thing I'm going to do every year now, because I think it gives me a little bit more motivation to stay on top of things. Because man, when you take off like a few weeks, it's amazing how fast you drop, how fast your body just loses it. So yeah, so that's kind of my motivation to stay on it.
I'm a big fan of doing things every single day, even if you're just barely, you should never barely put in the effort, but just doing the minimum to check off the box, at least to yourself, according to whatever that means for yourself. You maintain that habit that way. And then I also think it's really important to have like these events. I need to be better at this, where you just know that I'm going to do this event at this time, and that's what I'm preparing for. And then it's like when you're thinking of traveling, or you're thinking of like, all of the things that you do in your life, it's all baked and built around that event, which is like, a stake in the ground.
100%, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a real good motivator for me. What are you working towards for your running? Are you trying to get down to a certain mile speed or something?
Actually, yeah. I mean, I think I'm already there. If I was to try it, one of my goals was to be able to run a 6-minute mile, and I can hold a 6:30 pace at like my third and fourth and fifth mile. And so I'm sure that if I started fresh, I could be at a 6 mile. But one of my goals is just to get to a place in life where I'm hoping actually through podcasting I can get this, because like you could just try to buy trainers and you can try to buy coaches and all that. I've tried that stuff in the past, but I've never been able to find something that like works for me. But I would love to find like a partner in fitness that can analyze everything and be like, here's the mistakes that you're making on your form. You need to like lift your leg higher, or like have less ground contact time, or whatever it is. So I'm hoping that the longer I'm in the game, the longer I'm doing it, the more I'll be breaking into like higher tiers of people that are super serious about it and super knowledgeable about it. And then they can kind of fill those gaps that I have.
I love that.
But I should like come up with like, run a half marathon or those kind of things, because I do think that those credits really help like, put a bow on things. And even if like, they're not always the highest form or highest achievement, it still really matters, because it's like still a credential. And those credentials, you need to like make sure that you're getting those and that you're getting credit for your work somehow. And I think a good way to do that is by having those events.
Yeah, it's important to build out your resume. I think that's one of the like more important things that my dad taught me early on is, you really just want to accomplish things because it makes you, it makes you feel good, and then it helps you push forward for the future. And I think that's one of the reasons I was able to be so successful so early in hotels is I was in Starwood Marriott, and I was out of college 23, 24, and I was going to open these hotels with 45-year-olds, and I was this 25-year-old looking around the room, and if you don't feel like you should be there, then you're not going to be there. So I really kind of use those accolades to try to build myself and be like, I do belong to be here. I'm better than these guys that are around me, and I get the team more excited than they do. I have these benefits of being younger and in with them. And if you don't, I don't like that fake it till you make it line anymore.
Yep.
Like I used to kind of roll with that, but there is some truth to it for sure. Like I probably shouldn't have been there because they had much more experience than I had at the time, but I was more passionate and I was giving more effort. So I was able to be there, and then it ended up working out better for me. That's how you bridge the gap.
Exactly. Just to address the fake it till you make it, I see there's two sides of it. When you're just a young buck and you're starting out, you haven't had the opportunities that everyone else has had. And I think there was some philosopher that said something to the effect of everyone starts out as an amateur, and they basically just have to do what other people have done and kind of like try it out and evolve their style. And what makes an artist is they kind of steal that style and make it their own. Mm-hmm. And I think that applies to everything, business and entrepreneurship. So there is an element of just acknowledging that you're going to have to like push yourself outside of your comfort zone in the beginning. But after you've done that enough times, I then think it's important to transfer to the other side. You know Alex Hermosi?
Mm-mm. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
He's an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he has a quote that I like, that's something to the effect of, you don't get confidence by shouting affirmations into the mirror. That's kind of the fake it till you make it. You mm-hmm. get confidence by having an undeniable list of credentials, even yourself. Like, I used to be this way, now I'm that way. I couldn't do this triathlon, now I can. And those kind of things are the root of confidence. Another quote that's coming to mind from Carl Jung is that the only people that have a true right to self-confidence are the people that have faced the challenges and truly overcome them. And that can be starting a business or overhauling your fitness.
I love that.
You got to really know that you did it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think what a lot of people, when they're starting out, this goes right in line with what you're saying, is they try and be original from the outset. and they try and blaze their own trail without being there, yet. I think that if you don't reinvent the wheel, almost all of my businesses was like, wow, that's a really cool path. That's a really cool way they market it. That's a really cool concept. And I thought, well, you know what? I think this could work with that, and utilizing some of their learnings and some of the things they did really well then fit into, what my businesses had done. I modeled my nonprofit after a different nonprofit. And, you just said Hermosi. Yeah, he actually is one of the people that we initially looked at for the podcast as like, yeah, I love this concept, but we have such a different spin that we feel is more dynamic and original for us. And we think we can add value in this way. So yeah. Fake it till you make it, but also just find, use someone else's wheel until you're able to carve it into your own. But it's such a harder barrier of entry to be completely original on these ideas. So,
and it's probably not like your new idea is probably not the right idea. Like your elaboration of a great idea might be the right idea. It's kind of just the idea of standing on the shoulders of giants, or like, or Carl Sagan, if you want to bake an apple pie from scratch, first invent the universe. Nobody has done anything on their own. We are all beneficiaries of everyone that came before. Right. And I think that's an important thing. So who would you say that has most influenced you in your businesses, mentorship? Like who's been your guides, I guess?
I think most influential for me was my business partner in the hotel management company for two reasons. First, because he was like my first real professional mentor. When I was in college, he gave me my first job, and he was the one that kind of showed me like, be great and do this really well at the front desk. It's just like, it's a very basic thing, checking people in, doing, reservation stuff. But if you get good at that, you get the opportunity to do the next thing. If you get good at that, you get opportunity to do the next thing. So it's like in college, I was like front desk manager, housekeeping manager, marketing manager, director of sales and marketing, and then GM. By the time I graduated the hotel, I knew how to do everything in the hotel. And he showed me like, if you do these things well, if you excel, you get on to the next challenge and you get more opportunities. And I think that really like set me up the dominoes. He set up the dominoes for me to be successful. And then that transitioned over to Starwood. So his name's Gene Seguida, and he's definitely someone that I idolize as like a really good person. And the second reason is because he just really has this philosophical side that I've loved. He's Japanese, and he really has a lot of these like Eastern concepts that have really helped kind of guide my early years professionally. And I just love the way that he lives his life, trying to be accepting of all people, trying to be kind to all people, having integrity in everything that you do. Like these are like such critical things that are just not discussed enough. And they're so important in business and in your personal life to be known as a person of integrity, and that, like we're talking about trust and all these other things, like in partnerships, in all these things that you do in friendships, like if you don't have these things, then they're not going to be real friendships, because you're going to have people that aren't always trusting you and all these things. So probably Gene is the number one.
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought.
No, that was it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, look at the depth of your own relationships. I mean, I can't agree with everything you said more, but like with Supergenics, you're on year 12 of working with these partners. Couldn't have happened if you guys didn't trust and value each other. And that those relationships compound and accumulate in the same way that money that's well invested does. And that should, I think, be a goal of any young entrepreneur, is to find people that they're going to partner with, not for 5 years, for 50 years. I think it was Naval that said something like that like, if you're not going to work with somebody in 5 years, you shouldn't work with them at all, or no, like for your whole life. Yeah. And I think it goes back to just the idea of the, sure, there's compounding effects in a network and all this stuff, but like really what makes people happy, I think, is relationships and the depth and quality of your relationships. And that's something that you've cultivated in your family, and that you prioritized, and knew that like you have this window of time, this 5-year period before your kids go off to school and start becoming people of their own, where even if they don't remember all that, you're going to remember all that, and for the rest of your life. And when they're 30 and you're 80, you're going to have those memories. And I think that's a very forward-thinking approach to lifestyle design.
Yeah. And then while you were talking about that, the other really huge mentor that I probably don't even more subconsciously, since he passed away when I was younger, but my grandpa was such a giving person. Like, he lived his life to help people. If he was driving down the street and he saw, someone at the bus stop that, looked like they needed help, he would just pull over and say, like, where do you need a ride to? He would go deliver food to people in need. And he wouldn't talk about it. He would just do it. And over my early years, I would see him doing these things. And I would think, talk about living the life of a good person, like not talking about it, not whatever, but everyone knows and sees what he's doing. And he's just known as someone that helps people in need. And I couldn't think of like a better legacy to have than to just pass away and be known as someone that had a heart for people who needed help and to go out and do those things. And I think, like, now as we're talking about it, it's like, that was super impactful for me that my grandpa did those things, sometimes at the sacrifice of his family. So there's always like a line there, but like overall, like, better to be on the side of like being overly generous and benevolent. So I think that would be another huge impact on my life, to try and strive to have a legacy of being known as someone that helped people who needed help.
While you were saying that, the idea of service was coming to my mind, and how it's so easy to get pulled into this narcissistic world. I am the world's biggest narcissist. I'll be the first to admit it. And I think it's natural to be a narcissist in this world of social media, where you're like, look at me, look at these posts, like, here's the things I'm doing. But that's like crazy. When you get out of your own head and you start like looking at other people, like the building an orphanage in Haiti, or helping somebody in your local community, all of that really does, if you're doing it in the right spirit, get you out of your own head. And it really, it's a form of like helping yourself. Service really does kind of help yourself in that way.
Yeah, one of the things my dad always said was, the best way to build esteem is to do esteemable acts. So if you're not feeling great about yourself, like, go help someone. You're going to feel fucking great about yourself after you go help someone. So, almost in like a selfish way. If you're not doing good, if you're feeling like you're not doing great, go help people. There's nothing that helps you feel better than helping people. I
wonder why more people don't have that attitude. I mean, it takes time and energy and effort, and
that's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah. And that's why you have to find your freedom. You have to build a lifestyle, and then you have to imagine a lifestyle that you want, and then you have to do the necessary steps to actually get that freedom.
Yeah. It's kind of a hard barrier, and that's one of the things that I hope to expand in the nonprofit. Not just to be, the end game will be to help our orphanage in Haiti, but I hope locally. With my kids, every few months we go to Costco, buy socks and snacks and waters and things. And we put them in, the girls buy the stuff and put it into a little kit. And then when we see homeless people, we'll just have this box in the car of these kits. And my 5-year-old will say like, oh, Daddy, one of our friends is sleeping on the street. So we'll pull over and we'll get out and just give him the little kit. And it's a very small thing. But I think it kind of plants the seed in my children, I hope, to have that same type of thing. And I would love to expand that with the other children in our friend group and in the neighborhood, to just be like, let's just do these small things to just be helping people, and kind of helping people get on that track of like, oh yeah, let's go do something. If I have these kits in my car, I can always give it to them when I see homeless people and stuff like that. So trying to just keep the ball rolling.
Well, keeping that ball rolling, it's like, it's such a practice. The charity is its own form of work, just like travel, charity, like people like idolize these things. It's like, oh, I would love to be able to do that. Well, it's like hard work,
Right.
And the first time you try something, you're not going to be great at it. So like, maybe you gift that to the wrong person. Like, that was the one who really needed it or whatever. Right. And, but the more that you build that into your lifestyle, and I love the idea of just like having something ready to, like a little package that you can just hand out to anyone. That's a really cool idea. And building that level of service into your life and into your habits, I think would yield just such a great like mindset, and such a great way you think about yourself and feel about your contributions to the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the selfish part of charity. Right. It's like,
yeah.
I feel great about that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing on that selfish point. One of my friends who I'm trying to mentor, he sent me a link to this YouTube TikTok guy that was filming himself going out to a homeless person and giving them money to help change their life on something that they wanted to do. And I had such like a mixed reaction to it. I was curious what your thought was. So filming, going out and filming yourself, becoming successful, giving money to people, you're obviously making a positive impact in their life. But you're also kind of, without asking, kind of going and videoing these people. I was curious what your take on that as we kind of move into this more social media world that seems to be ever growing.
I think it's really hard to do things out of a pure spirit, out of just like the intention to only serve. But also the other half of that is like things need to be sustainable. If you want to give money away, you have to have a way to generate it. And
that was the rebuttal. That was the rebuttal my friend had to me. He's like, dude, he's giving more and more money away because he's making a ton of money on these TikTok videos. And I'm like, that's a good point. Like, you can't really argue about it. And I'm not getting a lot of money for my nonprofit currently. Like, I don't do a ton of marketing for it. Like, it's mostly just like a passion project that I'm hoping will organically grow. But it's just like, man, he's making, a bigger impact, with what he's doing. So it's one of those things that, it's got a little bit of a dichotomy with it. It's like, yeah, I don't love all of it.
It gets really dicey anytime it starts getting into like, a fame element or whatever, where you're trying to like accrue views and like get your name out there. The way I see it these days though is like fame has not even fame, celebrity, whatever you want to call it, influence maybe, was so concentrated for all of time in history in the kings and the court of the king and like then the dukes and the whatever. And then it was the politicians and then it became like the actors and the blah, blah, blah. Now we know that it's like that influence is actually better to be distributed, just like power. It's better if it's distributed across a wide base. But the question becomes like, why do you want that? Is it fueling your narcissism, or are you, I don't know. Like, I think about this stuff for myself. I talk to a lot of comics on my podcast. And one of the questions I always ask is like, why are we trying to get on a stage and tell people what we think?
Right.
Like I want to be on the light with my voice amplified and I'm going to tell you what I think. And
what is the main response? What is the theme? Is it just the rush of being on stage? Oh, they stub their toe
when they're 3 years old and now the world owes them everything. It's like, there's the rush of being on stage and there's like a big thing that a lot of people talk about is the immediate energy in the room. And man, it is something. Like, I'm sure you get the same thing at Toastmasters, or if you go and speak at a conference, whatever.
For me, it's karaoke. I get that.
Karaoke
rush.
is a great example. Yeah. Like if you're in front of 30 people and you're putting yourself out there, depends on how forgiving they are.
All three of the people that watch my karaoke when I go to the bar, man, they are loving it.
They're loving it. But
all three people.
As you're putting yourself out there and getting that immediate feedback, it does create this really compelling energy. And it almost is like, it's not like a hit of a drug, but there's something that you want to seek it again. But then not everybody does it. And so I guess it's not, something that everyone is interested in.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, like for our Find Your Freedom podcast, I can tell you, we put it out on Spotify and Apple and YouTube. And I can tell you when you look at it weekly and you look at the performance, what it has done for me is I look and I think, fuck, man, like how can we provide better value and keep growing this? Like I don't want to just put content out there. I want content to be out there that people will watch me like, this is applicable and digestible, and I can, it can improve my life if I, use these inspirational resources from these people. Like every week, like I have a spreadsheet that I go in with my host partners. Like I want to get better content. I want to make our questions better, that we're pulling more quality information that's more concise, so that when people listen to it, it's like, oh yeah, like I love that. That's a gem. I want every episode to be like, oh, that's like a gem. That is so usable for me. And I know like for you, like the entertainment value, as I've been watching yours, like there's so much like laughter and joy and interesting topics in them. And that seems to be like what your niche is to be very topical and I love, I love the
so
passion
far. I mean, I think that these things become like a company. It's a living organism. And at first you're just trying to nurture it by giving it water and food as much as you can. And then hopefully if you do all that right, it takes on a life of its own. But the biggest thing, I agree, is like thinking, how do you provide value? You don't want to just be like another voice screaming in the void, like
right.
on Twitter or whatever. You want to actually be able to, I don't know, like everyone I do really believe has something to offer, everyone. And how do you get that out of that person?
Right.
And that's what I love what you're doing with your podcast is it is focused on entrepreneurs and showcasing like, hey, here are people that have figured it out in some degree and that you can use to maybe be a template or otherwise just know. Sometimes we just have to know things are possible. Somebody runs a 4-minute mile, never was done before. Now the next guy does it in a month just because they know it's possible.
Yeah, I feel like that analogy is like I've heard that probably like 5 times in the last 2 days. That form, I was at the gym and I heard it twice from guys talking in the gym yesterday. It really is one of those things like, who knew it was possible? And then someone does it and now it's like, it is possible. So the fear of going out on your own, both twofold, whether you're younger and you just don't have a lot of experience and it's just fear because you don't know what you're doing, or so that's kind of like the one half of our demographic. The other half is these people that are in corporate jobs that are unfulfilled and unhappy, and they keep having this thought like, there's more for me, there's more for me. Like, there's so many people that really enjoy their jobs. They're fulfilled and they like it and it provides their family the resources they want. And our podcast is not for those people. It's for the ones that sit at their job and think, God, this sucks. I want something else. I want to do my own thing. I feel like I want to have equity in my own life. I want to be able to, with my own sweat, pay for my own vacations. And there's a big risk to stepping off and doing that. So what we hope is to provide a little bit more of a roadmap for people that can say, oh, well, this person did this side hustle with very low risk, that he got it going on the side while he was still working here. And then once he got some momentum, then he was able to scale it with full time. So there's all these different roads. And that's what has been so crazy for me. Like even just talking to you when we did, when we got VC backing for our startup, it just is like, there's so many different roads that people are able to find their freedom on. We have, in the next few weeks, like a lady who started her own bikini brand, and now she has like over 1 million Instagram followers on her Beach Bunny brand. And we have a guy who started a multifamily real estate business, and I met him on my honeymoon 8 years ago in Thailand hiking a volcano. And he said he was thinking of starting his own business. He was at a corporate job. And we talked, and I said, oh, yeah, I have my own thing. I used to be corporate, too. And I said, well, when you start your business, like, let me know. Send me your first deal. So a few months later, he sends me his first deal, and it looked really good. And I invested with him. Fast forward 8 years later, this guy is now partnered with Joe Fairless, who has the longest running daily real estate podcast in the world. They ended up meeting up with each other, and now they run a multifamily real estate empire they manage, I think it's $6 billion worth of real estate. Wow. In 8 years he did this. And it's just like, there's all these crazy stories. And then, and then we talk with other people that, started branding companies on Amazon, and now they live like a totally free life. It's like so many crazy, unique stories. And look at you. You worked for Snapchat. You had all these things, and now you're doing stand-up and have your own podcast and have the freedom to run fucking 6 miles every day.
I mean, but that's the thing is like, it's important to showcase all these different roads that people take, and people might have varying degrees of success at whatever they try, but it's still just like important to show that here are these people that decided to make a change in their life, and they were able to make that, and just knowing that that's possible is
They're
a
not
big
special.
Part of things.
Yeah, they're not
nobody's
special.
Right. There's not
Yeah,
like
they just
some
did
like
it.
set apart group. Yeah, they're just the ones who did it. Exactly. And so what I think actually that's the answer to the question I was going to ask, but to see if you have anything to add, what would you say to like a new person, like a 20-year-old just out of college who's really doesn't want to go down the corporate road and is unsure what they want to do, but they know they want freedom. They know they want autonomy.
Yeah, I think that my thought process on this is going to evolve as my experience with these entrepreneurs grows. But I think currently there's two roads, there's two paths. The one path, one of our guests said this phrase, which really stood out to me. It's get in the corridor. So it's called get in the corridor because you put yourself in a group where you're able to learn something and be around people that are experts in what you want to do, and they teach you and they model you, and you're able to become an expert. And then once you're in the corridor, then you can open the door and go do your own thing. So that's one path that I think a lot of people that I recommend. That's probably the safer path. And then the other road I think is really kind of the balls to the wall road. It's just like, I'm just going to go start trying shit and I'm going to see what sticks. I'm just going to try a bunch of stuff and I'm going to throw it up on the wall. And for the fresh out of the college kids that are, not really wanting to do something else, there's such a low barrier to entry on the influencer world and all these different things to be able to monetize that life now. That you can even do that on the side while you're getting your first job. But that's kind of like the other route. It's just like, I'm just going to go start trying things and learning things on my own. And you have to be really disciplined to take that road because that's going to take a lot of like self-education and really kind of grinding on your own without having like specific mentors. You'll have YouTube mentors and influencer mentors. But I think those are like the two like common paths. There's obviously a huge variant in between. But those are the two recommendations.
And maybe the best thing is to just know both of those approaches and do your best to do both the grind approach and the surround. I mean, you said it multiple times in this episode is you really, and this is like my whole life is based around this, is like find a way to surround yourself with people that are better than you somehow in any dimension, because naturally through osmosis or whatever, like however people relate to each other, you're going to improve, assuming that that's what you want.
Absolutely. But the trick to that is if you surround yourself by people that are better than you, but you don't provide them any value, it's going to be a short-lived relationship. So you have to really think about yourself, like, how am I going to provide these people value? And I think you're kind of like me, or you're more skilled than me. But I mean, I always thought like I didn't know the value I was bringing. People saw the value I was bringing because I worked so hard to get these kind of, like bringing people together to work well together, building a culture, building organizations, managing people to do jobs better than I would ever do them. Those are kind of like nuanced things that I wasn't able to really tangibly know about until people were like, dude, you kill it, all this like stuff that isn't like common. And that's what the value I was bringing, whereas other people just bring like real knowledge and expertise in programming and marketing or legal or finance and analyzing numbers, and like there's so many different things you can become an expert in. But if you don't provide the value to these other people that are so good, like you just said, like people ask me why I've been successful in the few things that have worked out for me. It has 100% been me partnering with people that were much smarter than me, that I was able to just use their skill set, and I provided enough value that it made sense for them, and then it worked out. It really is like very little on me and what my skill set is, for sure. Dude,
I think that's such a great way to concretize this episode and tie it up in a bow is the path to being an entrepreneur. You have all of these different roads, but just like with relationships and starting a business and all these different things, you need to find some real value. You need to find some way to provide a benefit to somebody. And then through that, natural trades are going to happen that make everyone richer, everyone happier, and everyone more fulfilled, and hopefully everyone more free.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Find your freedom, baby.
Find your freedom. Find your freedom. So how do we find your show, and how do we find our freedom?
Yeah. So our show's called Find Your Freedom. We're on Apple and Spotify. There's a couple shows with our name, unfortunately, but you can look for our goofy cartoon logo.
I love the logo.
And then Better Together International is just at bettertogetherint.org. And I can tell you the most thing that you can do is just go do good things for people. Go do something that will make yourself feel better today. If you see someone in need, open that door for them, hold that door for them, pull out the chair for them, buy food for someone that's sitting outside that's hungry. That's my main thing that I would like to pass on to people.
Jonathan, you've opened doors for me and given me these great gifts. So you're a walking example of that. And I just appreciate your time and coming on the show and sharing all this with us. I do really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.